Hello, everybody. Welcome to our session for Together United, using a student union to improve a diverse campus culture. We're really excited to share all the great content that we have with you today. And first of all, let's introduce the team and kind of share who we are and what we do at our respective institutions or organizations. My name is Winston Bao. I'm a design director at LPA, and I'm really excited to be here today.
I'm Andrea Pippin, also with LPA. I'm an accredited learning environments planner through A4LE and work on facilities master plans for LPA.
Hello, my name is Jimmy Francis. I'm the Associate Executive Director for Operations and Services at the University Student Union at California State University, Northridge.
Great. Well, again, we have a diverse panel here because our perspectives have really kind of allowed us to create experiences as well as kind of create programs and services for a diverse set of students and campus constituents. So we're really excited again to share the story that we want to tell today. And with that, Andrea, can you walk us through maybe the learning objectives and then kind of start us off with what we wanted to at least have in our agenda today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Winston. So starting with the learning objectives for today, we'll set the stage with an introduction to the components of a positive school climate, then place those within the setting of a student union. You'll be introduced again to Jimmy Francis and the work he's done with Cal State Northridge, developing facilities that support student well-being and mental health, finally wrapping with an example of a successful student engagement process for the student union expansion at CSU Northridge. So first, setting the stage with a brief example, an explanation of a safe and inclusive school climate. So fostering a positive school climate can be categorized into these 4 areas: safety, relationships, teaching and learning, and the institutional environment itself, as identified by the Center for the Center for Social and Emotional Education. None of these areas are mutually exclusive and often overlap or bleed into one another. So starting with safety, this speaks not only to physical safety, but to emotional safety, as verbal abuse is typically more prevalent than physical altercations when it comes to bullying in the school environment and even beyond, especially when we consider nowadays the cyberbullying, which unfortunately exposes students to emotional stresses outside of the school hours and off of the school grounds. So one way to foster an emotionally safe school is to establish and consistently enforce a set of school rules and norms, as well as bully prevention methods. These rules and their consequences for misbehavior work best when they're perceived by the students as being fair for the students' emotional safety to be preserved. They should know what to expect from their actions and feel that the consequence is just. Creating a positive school climate can be linked to a reduction in aggression and violence and has more to do with the individual's feeling of connectedness to his or her school. So this ties into the next essential area of relationships. This category of relationships is arguably the biggest influence on positive school climate. Healthy relationships support students by providing them the feeling of being cared for and being cared about by their teachers, administrators, and fellow students. This results in less risky or unsafe behaviors. From a psychological perspective, this idea of relationships also extends to the student's relationship with his or her own self, speaking to a student's level of self-esteem, feelings of self-worth, and the ability to mitigate criticism. This in turn extends to the following area, which is teaching and learning. So this area of teaching and learning touches on the student-teacher relationship and speaks to the importance of clearly defined sets of norms, goals, and school values as touched on earlier. This is where the school's academic program comes into play and how the learning experience plays an important role in fostering a positive school climate. It's also why social emotional learning has become so prevalent in K-12 curriculum today. Experiential learning and authentic projects are other strong academic programs because they provide students with real-world problems. They expose students to different ideas and thoughts, encouraging thoughtful discussion between students and promoting a deeper level of understanding of those viewpoints of others. So examples of this include debate classes or civic project-based exploration in group settings. Creating a positive school climate can also powerfully affect the lives of educators and increase a district's ability to retain teachers. So all of these factors that produce an inclusive school climate for students can also be turned around and applied to the educators' well-being also. So then naturally, this eventually evolves into the institutional or school environment as well. So when creating a positive school environment with the factors that we've gone over already, one could also consider the size of the school. It's been shown that smaller schools are able to foster stronger relationships and that feeling of overall connectedness. And even schools with a high enrollment could achieve this through the creation of small learning communities. But regardless of school size, the built environment can foster a safe and inclusive environment, in part by providing clear sight lines and visual access across areas so that most, if not all of the areas can be supervised. So this sets the teacher and administrators' minds at ease, as well as that of the students when they know a trusted authority figure is accessible. So speaking of accessibility, the built environment can provide a feeling of security in the form of student choice, amenities, and availability of resources and materials. This can happen on a small scale within each classroom where necessary resources, tools, materials are readily available, or on a larger scale, larger campus-wide scale, as with centralized shared spaces that provide opportunities for socialization, dining, recreational play, or study. So now that we have this base of knowledge on the factors that influence a positive school climate, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Jimmy Francis with CSU Northridge.
Thank you, Andrea. Let's talk a little bit about the campus culture and perhaps maybe better said, the role of the student union on a college campus. You know, I really enjoy talking about this. You asked, it's like, what more fun is there to talk about your job than anything else in this world right now? So, you know, I think first, let's just talk a little bit about CSUN, because I know we talked about California State University Northridge, which I will refer to as CSUN. That's how we abbreviate things on our campus. We're located in Los Angeles County in California. We're one of the 23 California State University campuses. And really, CSUN is a really dynamic, diverse learning environment. You know, 59% of the students are made up of from traditionally underserved populations, very much a first generation college serving institution, really a great place to work, to learn, and to live. I specifically work for the student union at CSUN, which is a nonprofit auxiliary, which really our sole existence is to exist to serve students. And specifically, if you think about the role that, you know, our union and the college union play, next slide if you don't mind, Winston, is really, you know, we are there to help students achieve their educational goals. And that looks very different on a lot of different campuses. At CSUN, it looks different than other campuses across the country. And Andrea touched on this earlier, but I think truly the role of the college union, student union, is to facilitate that strong connection, to help build community, to help build that sense of belonging, which is so key to student success. That's really what we try to do every day, create that community. Students can connect, achieve their educational goals. Now, we do that by developing students through all different types of things: employment, facilities, programs. And of course, when we're trying to do that, we're trying to innovate as well and trying to do new things, perhaps learning some things like we'll learn today. We continually need to ask ourselves, what do students want? We recently asked that question as we were thinking about our future at CSUN. And here's just a little a word grab of some of the things that came back from the students. You know, collaborative learning, play, deepened connection, opportunities, shade, welcome, diversity, respect, events. You can see that this what students want is not always about the built environment, it's also about the softer side of what we do. It's important to always understand what the students want. And this looks different to a lot of people. When we talk about creating community on a college campus through the student union, it's evolving programs, culturally inclusive, socially responsible. This looks a lot of different ways. In this picture, you can see just, maybe 6 examples of different things that are all very different. And oh, I almost forgot to mention too, fun. Mm-hmm. We need to create fun ways to connect with our campus. So it's very important that as we think about creating that positive social climate and how we can support the student union. So let's look at a couple different ways about different examples of how the student union support and identify engagement strategies. It's not always about the built environment. So I think it's important for us to take a second to think about how student unions and our role is to have employment and leadership opportunities as well. I grabbed this statistic, which was very, very reassuring and also enlightening to us at CSUN. In 2019 and 2018, 86% of our student employees said that their experience with us is helping contribute to their success. So as we're thinking about the role of the college union, and you're thinking about maybe perhaps working with the campus that you're working with or the campus that you reside on, it's not always about the built environment. It's about employment and leadership, developing our students in different ways. So let's transition a bit. We mentioned an early on example, Andrea mentioned about opportunity to help engage our students and help them through facilities and programs in the built environment. So at CSUN, there was this very specific problem that we identified, and that problem was through stress and sleep. So stress and sleep were affecting our students more than national average, which we'll show you on the next slide. And it was to the level that a group came together to collaborate to try to solve that problem through programs and facilities. We partnered with LPA, we partnered with our university counseling services, we partnered with our student health department, and we came together to try to understand how we can create an experience, an environment, programs and services to help students. Winston, if you don't mind, next slide, please. So here we can show you, we found through our National College Health Assessment, and that's done on college campuses all across the country, that CSUN students were struggling with stress and sleep above the national average. And here you can see that information. So what did we do? We collaborated, we came together, and we tried to help with this problem. We know we're not going to solve it. I mean, gosh, when you think about stress and sleep, and when we were all in college, those are like a given, right? But we can help contribute. So you'll see this little side picture here. We created the Oasis Wellness Center, which is this dynamic, unlike any experience that we've been able to find on a college campus, a retreat from the hustle and bustle, where, for example, you can see here in this photo, we have our napping program where we do over 3,000 nap reservations per semester, where students can just escape for 45 minutes from the hustle of campus and disconnect. Really a unique experience in where we're engaging and promoting that positive social climate, really through a diverse program. So one of the things we always ask ourselves is, what's next? And we know we mentioned that before, meeting the students where they're at, asking them what they want. So what's next for the college union? What's next on college campuses? So, at CSUN, we're keeping an eye on a couple things here. We have some examples. So basic needs, advocacy, mental and physical health, diversity and inclusion. So if you were to have that, that magic crystal ball and looked off into the future, what would you see as some challenges on the campus that you're working with or the campus that you're on? We see these things as kind of bubbling to the top, especially the first one, basic needs and advocacy. Within the last, 6 months or however long you want to define this pandemic period by, we have seen, or not necessarily only the pandemic period, but also the social, justice issues that have been come to light. The role of the college union is changing. So let's just look at basic needs real quick for 1 second and expand upon that. So a concept that we're kind of playing around with, and I might just challenge your thinking, is maybe think about the college union in the past where we had all these adjacencies where a student would pop from one thing to the next. They would go into the Pride Center and then visit the Copy Center. Maybe over time we have seen these things overlap a bit, where now they're more of these things are under one roof. But perhaps our challenge is, can we create this environment for students as they experience our college unions where it's seamless, where it's together, where, and this is what we hear from some of our students. So a barrier to going into the food pantry might be, I don't want to go in there because I don't want someone to see me, judge me, label me. Oh, that person's poor, they need food. But if you don't mind, Winston, next slide. But if we can create an environment where perhaps these things are centralized in an area. So on a college campus, if you just look at basic needs, what has occurred more than likely on the campus is that different groups are offering different services, these what we have labeled communities of support all over the campus. What if we could bring them to one spot on campus? What if we could centralize them? A student could walk into a space. They might need to pop into the food pantry, but they might also be able to sit, lounge, study, talk, maybe recreate in another area of the building. They're no longer walking in off a sidewalk to a space and someone sees them and they think that they're poor, or they're afraid to go in because they don't want to be labeled as such. This seamless environment. And that's really kind of one of the things we wanted to share today about this fused environment and what's next. So I'll transition over to Winston. There you go, Winston.
Yeah, fantastic, Jimmy. Thank you for really kind of exploring those concepts, because what you described was very exciting, because that evolution of what a union is and what it represents in its role. You know, when we look at a fusion environment, like what you just described there, where really we're giving and offering access for students in a dignified way that empowers them to be successful, but also is very empathetic as well, really kind of understanding from a student-centric point of view. So that's kind of where we feel is some of the most exciting opportunities are. And the section that we really wanted to kind of dive into a little bit more was talking about planning and design to support health and well-being, because what Jimmy described was this idea of really kind of understanding and addressing all the different facets and challenges, because our students come to us with real challenges that we need to help them with in order to be successful. So, you know, when we really kind of had that conversation, and it really is empowering to have it from a level that we're thinking, where you're thinking about it holistically, where it truly is an approach that is focused on student success. And that might mean a lot of different things. So kind of what Jimmy described is that it touches upon everything from a physical environment to programs and services and all the other things in between that really starts to stitch all these amazing opportunities together. So for us, you know, when we had the opportunity to really help the university at CSUN to develop this comprehensive and holistic approach, where truly a union's role has become a beacon of student life. This idea that, you know, like the recreation center here that I'm showing, is starting to describe a place where students connect beyond kind of what traditionally has been sort of the model of how student life is celebrated on a campus. So when it truly represents perhaps a way of thinking of health and fitness as one aspect of it, a different way, and perhaps a complementary way to engage students. But again, how does that celebrate this aspect of student life on campus and truly address that concept of health and well-being? Because when you really think about it, you know, it's mind, body, and spirit, and all the other things that really help that holistic perspective in terms of advancing those initiatives. But truly, as Jimmy shared as well, you know, this idea that, you know, this is an interesting concept, because not only did it create the complement to what you just saw there, which is, you know, this very exciting, dynamic, and almost bold environment where health and fitness was really an aspect of it. This was really the complementary, almost like the bridge to the other aspects, which is mindfulness, this idea of nutrition, this idea of social and maybe even emotional well-being as part of that experience as well. In the distance there, you'll see as the water cascades down that glass wall and you see those nap pods in the relaxation room, truly it was creating not just a place, but an experience for students, an idea that they came here and really it was focused on disconnecting and almost like recentering in many ways. So it almost, in a way, the environment changed behavior. So that's what we were trying to use as an educational model, and not just this aspect of it, it's nice and it's a nice thing to do, but truly perhaps a necessary thing to do, where the habits, I think in this example that we were showing a second ago, where you come in, you check in, and actually you check in all your belongings, and when you come in there, it's creating a healthy habit for our students, not just necessarily at their time here at the university, but perhaps even for the rest of their lives. So that's kind of what that example represented in terms of fostering lifelong learning. And here, I think it's the concept of the ripple effect, right? And in a project where you had, I don't know, somewhere between 5,800 or 5,900 square feet of underutilized space on campus, how did the university union look at potentially revitalizing, re-energizing, and almost redefining that experience? So in a renovation, so it doesn't have to even be this, big ground up, but in this idea where it was an intervention and looking at even underutilized landscape. And as you look at the cross section in some of these images here, it was truly an opportunity to kind of help students find balance. When Jimmy described the hustle and bustle of literally from the time they wake up and even just driving or even walking onto campus to the end of the day, where how do you find that intervention during the day to kind of find that balance and perhaps even mindfulness as part of it. And again, as I mentioned, healthy habits, and facing all these challenges. So whether it's in the context of an outdoor environment, I think it was very interesting for us to explore these concepts of outdoor rooms, really creating environments that support that engagement, but at a very different scale, because on a campus of over 37,000 students, as you can imagine, it's very lively and dynamic. So how do you create those opportunities for a complementary experience, whether it's even in a small kind of in the low right-hand corner there with the peer group counseling, this idea where you can kind of engage your own peers and fellow students in whether it's in a social environment and or a programmed environment to, again, help students find access as well as places where they can have those engagements as well. So when you think of those aspects, whether it's the physical and the fitness part, the mindfulness, but this idea where as the union continuously evolves, is this place of lifelong learning. And I think that's something we always had to remind ourselves, not that we forgot, but truly it was a place of lifelong learning and teaching students, in addition to the amazing academic programs that they have access to, but truly things that will help them for the rest of their lives. But we ask questions that, on a campus or in an institution, who teaches empathy and inclusion? Who teaches diversity? And all the things that kind of make a rich and diverse campus culture. So this story that we wanted to share was this evolution of how ideas were woven into that fabric of the student union experience here at Northridge. We kind of use some abstract imageries, but truly what we were trying to get to the essence of this power of connection, a place of engagement, a place for people to be and students to be together. But truly it represented a symbol of unity and how it would be a magnet and almost the center of gravity for student life on campus. So our story was based on discovery. Like Jimmy mentioned, when we'll share some of the engagement exercise that we had as well. But we wanted to discover what that story and that narrative would help describe those spaces that would really support these programs and services. For us, when we started this campaign or this journey to embark on almost excavating what is great about the experience there and how can we make it better and how does that actually contribute to the fabric of the campus. So it was truly a transformative opportunity, and it was inspired this idea that you can see some of these diagrammatic and abstract images, but really respecting and understanding the individual identity of each student, really that all students come to us with a lot of different perspectives and needs and things that really define sort of their experience. But this idea where we start to kind of overlay that fabric where diversity and Jimmy used the word community, I think is really important. The aspect of creating a place where students can come together and build that community that is uniquely in this case, CSUN. So I think that was a really amazing prospect as we evolved that conversation. And ultimately, when you bring all that together, what is the thing that stitches it all together? This strength in terms of like sharing and celebrating and really coalescing all of those concepts as well as those needs together. So that was kind of like the big story in these three abstract images that you see in terms of that evolution of the student union. And we're going to share maybe just a couple images to, these were just concept images that we use as part of the CAPES campaign for the student referendum, because it's interesting when you kind of put it into the context that students were our client. Right, so the students were the ones who were really needing to be the advocates and the champions and the ones that really will be the ones using it. So in a way, you know, we had to create something that was exciting, something that really represented that fabric that we described, where both indoors and outdoors, places for impromptu, casual engagement, but also all the amenities. So when you look at maybe perhaps in this concept here, these were inspirational imagery that we created where, you know, you had access to food, to social activities, but also some of the amenities that might be shared as if you were walking in our own lifestyle choices, right? In our own local communities where you might be in the downtown district where you have access to food, entertainment, and all the things that kind of define that lively kind of level of campus activity. But also in the background, you start to see this multi-layering of spaces and environments where really it celebrates and becomes very clear about what this is, which is about diversity, which is about inclusion, which is about even thinking about art as an aspect of beauty and the environment as well. So we use these images not only to describe what that might look like, because as universities have become more of a 24/7 destination for student life, what we wanted to do was take opportunities to kind of celebrate places where you can have activities outdoors, but also it becomes a beacon. So in the distance here, in the distance, you see the Student Recreation Center. Somewhere in between, you'll see some other programs and services and spaces for students to access. But truly at the heart of this part of the campus becomes a beacon and a destination where that is celebrated and truly appreciated both day and night. So for us, we thought that was very exciting. And what it led to was the opportunity to educate our students as well, because part of the endeavor to perhaps engage the campus community became this challenge of, well, you know, as a planning committee on any for any project or any capital campaign, that you really want to create a successful and a strategic plan that allows you to go out there and achieve those goals and objectives. However, you have to have a plan that really starts to at least create a roadmap where you can engage your stakeholders, become collaborative in the way that you conduct sort of the process, but ultimately how it becomes inclusive and transparent. So what we wanted to share in this next section was an example of how we took those planning concepts, but created a forum where we can engage students. And before we got to those at least concepts, was this idea of what was the narrative that we were creating to help students both understand and also author. I think authorship was one of the biggest aspects of how we wanted to at least plan this process, was how would we engage the campus community of students, faculty, and staff in terms of how they would help shape that vision. And truly, you know, the student engagement part is some of the most exhilarating aspects of any planning that we do in terms of design, which is to explore, right? We want to take the moment to really, perhaps when Jimmy used the word innovate, you know, innovate happens at every level, whether it's the programs and services that you provide, but also innovate in terms of imagining what that next evolution of the student union might look and feel like. To inform the process, we want to give, when I say our clients, the students, the opportunity to make informed decisions. So truly, from their perspective, we recognize the majority, if not all students, have never been a part of something like this. It's very daunting, if anything, overwhelming. So what we wanted to do was create an opportunity to help them understand, but inform them so they can make those decisions that are that were based on evidence, as well as kind of the content that we were developing with them. And lastly, to inspire. I think that's one of the greatest things, because you often hear, as you can imagine with any planning process, it takes time. The idea of how do you engage your campus community in a way that acknowledges that, here we are today, but it's a marathon, right? So the idea that ultimately, how will your participation, as well as the decisions that you make, leave that legacy? And I think that's really important to understand, because at some point they're all going to be alumni, but how do you leave that legacy for future students and future learners at any institution? So I think that was really kind of important for us to kind of coalesce sort of our goals and objectives. And ultimately, this is what we did. I mean, that was pretty amazing that we created a series of events. So in one event over an afternoon, lunchtime, I think it was, Jimmy, we invited students to come have lunch. And I think over that noontime spread, it was over 350 students. So you'll see in this collage here in the top left, this is obviously before they got there, but truly it was a forum. I think maybe that's a good way to describe it. It was a forum where we can bring the campus community together to share stories, to talk about the future, to really imagine what that might be. So, we used everything from thought starters with kind of some really poignant questions to ask, in some contexts, what's missing? Or what do you think would complement your experience here at the university? And maybe just cite one of your favorite memories on campus. I mean, those things are ways for us, I think, to really engage it in a way where it's authentic, where we're really hearing it in first person, we're documenting it, but we're really, as you can see in some of these pictures, having students come together, and many of them didn't know each other. It was an opportunity to come together and really share that experience, and then perhaps share it with their fellow students as well. So yeah, that was from thought starters. We use a lot of imagery, as you can imagine, with planners and designers. We use that as thought starters to develop sort of that visual listening. And you'll be amazed, as you can see there, what a bunch of Post-its and pens and red dots and green dots will tell you. So if you're asking the right questions, there's a toolkit that that really can help develop that understanding, and that deep understanding, as we start to unbox a lot of the concepts that we were developing during our planning stages. So that was really exciting for us as we kind of engage the campus community. And I'll just share maybe a little bit of some of the content that we came up with. So you see thought starters like this, in describing, so you're not leading them to an answer necessarily, but truly was a question that was based on, what do you feel would be an ideal setting for a student union? So we got a lot of information back, and we had tons of these boards, but again, it was really a great way to kind of grab and gather all that data, basically the what's and the whys. But you may have access to a large perhaps what I'm thinking, a large forum, as we described, but as sometimes, in smaller focus groups, you can kind of, dig in a little bit more and kind of lean into some of those concepts. So we had some retreats where we engaged sort of the cross-cultural community aspects and things that kind of start diving into some of the more specific topics. And here, what you'll see is some of the focus groups that we engage to talk about what student-centric spaces might look and feel like. What does culture mean on campus, and things like that. So you'll see a more smaller and intimate engagement here, but truly what it was a little bit of a roll up your sleeves and a little bit more of a focused kind of conversation. But in the end, it's still the overlay and the alignment with the goal of creating a voice for our students. So we can capture the data, but at the same time, it's almost like handing the microphone off so they can create that opportunity to author that future. So interactive exercises, sometimes it just creates an opportunity to, again, show the variety and the diversity of the responses that we're getting, which was amazing because you'll see in some of these examples here, they came up with the content where they were able to describe even just like a statement where like nurture your nature was really interesting. It sounded abstract at first, but once it described some of the bullet points that you see down there, it really was an amazing way for them to kind of showcase, but also describe it in first person to the planning committee. But again, you'll see some of the other topics that came out there: centralized showcase for diversity and growth, and then celebrating diversity within us. I mean, so all this content was created by them, which truly was an amazing inspiration for our team. And again, if anything else, it created the opportunity to have very deliberate, but also informed conversation, because you're looking at student leaders here. So truly it was the opportunity for them to, again, engage in a process that was not only student involved, but student led. I think that's another really interesting and important aspect that we really wanted to facilitate. Was it was led by students for students. So I think that was really successful, because in the end, it was an opportunity again for them to kind of share and create a mission statement. I think our goal was at the end to have something that concisely described, when you cast that net really wide, you're going to gather a lot of data. You're going to gather a lot of information. But as you get into kind of these more focused groups, it was an opportunity to kind of start to synthesize it and distill it in a way that you can reach out again to the campus community and say, this is what we heard and this is what we learned. So ultimately, what it came to, or what it ultimately shaped, was the project statement, which was really important. So I recall, we had a meeting where we just paused and said, what an amazing endeavor that we kind of set out. Look at what we did, but here are the results of it. We came up with all this information that will help us kind of shape and plan, but also it created a concise statement that all students can relate to, because it was created by them, not somebody who was outside looking in. So with that, I wanted to pause because I think it was important to kind of give a backdrop, or maybe kind of set this table in describing that process, from the ideas, the goals, the vision, to the actual process of engagement itself. But the most important thing, and what we're excited to share, was the success of all that thoughtful collaboration, all that thoughtful planning, and all that engagement that we really committed to with that. So I'll have kind of Jimmy walk us through some of the things that kind of on the owner side, how they plan and what they saw.
Yeah, Winston, it's funny because I kept thinking of a tagline that we often used during your time you were chatting there, and it was created by CSUN students for CSUN students. So, what emerges from this monumental task and amount of information is certainly lots of taglines, lots of information. Within the CSU system, this process went to a student referendum, and within the CSU system, we're required to put together a voter's guide. Mm-hmm. So here you see an example of that voter's guide, where there's lots and lots of information. And what we did at CSUN, at the student unions, we picked apart different pieces of this information and different marketing campaigns around this. I think what's important and what was really enlightening about this process was that we're not permitted, and it wouldn't be the right thing to do either, to run a yes campaign. It's our job to educate. And I think having a partners on the design side and the architecture side that understood that was really helpful. I don't think there's a ton of value in going through the different pieces of these, the piece of the voter guide. But what I will say is that each piece, each little nugget was crafted out of the time spent with the students and the over, I think, 700-page report that was generated and followed to really enlighten and Winston said the word a bunch, inform and educate. And that's what we did. Mm-hmm. And as you'll see here on the next slide, successfully, we did a tremendous job educating the students. We passed our referendum, 61% yes, 39% no. And specifically what you are asking these students to do is to invest in their future. invest in the new heart of campus, invest in all the things that they've been telling you that they need. And what's even more interesting is they're investing in the future of the students down the road. Really, you know, if you think about the way that students are thinking now, they are much more conscious of paying it forward. These students voted 61% yes, 39% no to increase the fee of students down the road. And they felt that as a significant responsibility to really dot every I, cross every T, and examine whether or not this was a good decision. This was a challenging campaign. This was a fun process where we learned a lot, and we really crafted the future of the student union and really learned about ways we are going to make that an environment that engages students in a socially responsible way and a positive impact on their health and well-being, and really a robust program to help lead into the future. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Winston.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jimmy. I mean, you said it best. You know, this was truly a partnership. You know, planners and designers like Andrea and myself, we look at these opportunities to learn as well. You know, it's an opportunity to work with leaders like you and your team to understand really the essence of what students need. And again, you know, that there's some universal aspects to that, but I think there's some nuances and things that are very specific to each institution, location, region, and all that stuff. So for us, it really truly is a privilege, but an opportunity for us to kind of work in partnership with institutions to really think and learn and understand what students' needs are evolving, because they come with not just challenges, but expectations as well. So as we talk about how we can address those things here and now, but also that concept that you just described, as they're really taking a leadership role. They're taking a leadership role in making that investment. And in many cases, I think it's a stewardship aspect as well, you know, to say that we're going to invest in the students that we have here and now, but we know there's more generations of students that will come here, that we can leave this legacy of how we can create an environment that supports student success. And I think it's just simple as that. So with that, again, we were thrilled to be able to share this very diverse as well as comprehensive story from the beginning, with some of the principles and topics that Andrea had laid out that really kind of, again, set that foundation for our discussion. All the amazing things that from an owner's perspective, I think Jimmy was really invaluable in terms of being able to share that and look at that from his perspective and the institution's perspective. It was really great to kind of share the process and that concept or the vision. But here we are, you know, we did something that was very successful, and we thank you for joining us today. We hope that you were as intrigued, maybe excited and inspired to share this story, and feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any further questions. And thank you for joining our session, and hopefully you learned something as well.